Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to our first podcast. We're excited to have you. I am Angelo, alongside Mike and Mario. Guys, please don't forget to like and subscribe below.
Subscribe, motherfucker!
Go to our Instagram, at @TrashTalkFantasy_podcast. We put up daily content. We just want to let you guys know the one thing we do to separate ourselves from everybody else is we take every single question that comes in and we respond to every single question. We are on Twitter. We are on Facebook. We are on Instagram. Just reach out to us, TrashTalkFantasy_podcast. So today we have a ton of stuff to cover for you guys. We're going to go over all the injuries. Carson Wentz, Todd Gurley, Cam Newton. With our resident doctor, Dr.Nithin from @FantasyDoctors on Instagram. We're going to hit our daily hate, where we're going to talk about Tyreek Hill and all the things that we hate about the NFL and preseason. We're going to cover your questions in our mailbag segment, followed up by some bold predictions. All right, guys, let's get this started. I'm excited to get going here. First up on the breaking news is Carson Wentz's extension. Carson Wentz is now under contract through 2024, $128 million. And there's some pretty major dynasty implications here.
Yeah, the Eagles did a good thing here. They jumped on him with 2 years left on his current contract. So they are able to take that bonus money and spread it over the first couple of years. That's going to give them the ability to be flexible and keep their role players and their skill players signed. Right now, they still have Alshon Jeffrey signed through 2021, Ertz signed through 2021. They just drafted Dillard in the first round to help keep Carson upright. And they're just setting themselves up good long term to have success on the offensive side of the ball.
My only issue is I'm a little concerned about the injuries.
Yeah, if he goes down, I mean, who's going to throw Ertz the ball? What's going to happen to his numbers? What's going to happen to Alshon Jeffries? I mean, Ertz isn't going to break the catch record with Sudfeld back there. So you got to worry about the other guys around him, what they're going to do fantasy-wise if he goes down.
Yeah, Nick Foles isn't there anymore. Todd Gurley, no longer the bell cow back, per Ian Rappaport. We have a extensive interview with the fantasy doctor. I don't even want to talk about the injury just yet, but nuts to bolts here. They moved up early. They grabbed Henderson early on day 2. He's taken reps. I'm just going to pose a question here. If Henderson takes half the reps that Gurley had last year, is Todd Gurley still a top 10 running back?
No, he wouldn't be, but I don't think you have to worry about him coming in and taking half the reps.
Well, where do you...
I think it's going to be like a 1/3, 2/3, 66-33 type split. And we went through the numbers, and if we ratcheted back Gurley's numbers right by a third, he was still a top 5 fantasy running back last year. He was right there in that 5/6 spot.
Yeah.
So depending on how your league scores. So if he's going to still end there, why wouldn't he still be a top 10 overall pick?
Yeah, but where did he end at the end of the season? He started off hot and then trailed off. So, yeah, he might get you the beginning of the game, get you going, start your season off. But I wouldn't count on him to get you through the playoffs.
Next up, we have Tyreek Hill. Yeah, see, here's my issue. I'm not staying away from him like you, and then I'm also not going to follow where you're at, Mike, where you're like, just throw caution to the wind. A great player is going to be a great player. I'm hoping that we can collude with the listeners of this show and on the interwebs and just stay away from him. Just don't draft Todd Gurley, because I'm hoping the hype goes up to where I can grab him in the mid-3rd round, early 4th round, and kind of just snipe him from players. But that's just my personal opinion. Tyreek Hill. Charges will be dropped. He will be at camp. Now, I really love Tyreek Hill. To me, he's a top 10 pick. Where you're throwing caution in the wind with Gurley, I'm throwing caution in the wind with Hill.
Yeah, I still think he's a top wide receiver. He still is, Kelsey, who's going to help open up a lot on the field for him.
Do you feel confident drafting him? So top 10 wide receiver here. Let's look at a guy that's like right on the outside of the top 10. Is he going to go in the same spot like a Stephon Diggs?
No, I think he's going to fall a little bit just with this looming and the fact that the league didn't say they were backing off. Right? They just said that their investigation isn't going to change, which means he can still be suspended. And the worst thing is like what happened to me with Zeke a couple years ago, where that suspension was looming all season, and then boom, he hits it, and going into my first round of the playoffs cost me.
And you have to look back. Jimmy
Garoppolo.
No.
Graham.
No, was it Butler?
Going to basketball now?
No. Jimmy Smith.
Who?
Jimmy Smith.
Who the fuck is Jimmy Smith?
He's the guy that got suspended just for emotional battery.
Oh, okay.
Is that what it was? Emotional battery?
Because that's...
It wasn't even physical contact, and they took him out, what was it, 4 games?
Yeah, he was suspended 4 games for basically just audio of him being abusive verbally to his girlfriend, who he was going through a custody battle.
Yeah, it's in that sense, it's got to be tough to be an NFL player. Like, I really wouldn't want that burden, of being a celebrity. Like, listen, I do some fucking weird shit. Like,
I shouldn't be on the microphone, on camera all day.
I wouldn't get near that microphone. I'm just gonna say, like, shit gets a little freaky in here, and like sometimes my old lady, she beats me. So, like, I don't know. I might get suspended.
You heard it first here.
Help! If I blink twice, I'm in trouble. Anyway, speaking of Tyreek Hill, I have a big problem with Tyreek Hill. But what really drives me nuts is off-season suspensions. Tyreek Hill's a stud player I had in Dynasty last year. He may go anywhere from the first wide receiver overall based off of skill to getting drafted in the 15th round this year. He may be your new Josh Gordon. This may be the same overhype that we have. Me personally, I try and stay away from those guys because I'm so tired of the BS, but the NFL really needs to get it together and start making some clear justifications on things and just really clear decisions. I don't know how you guys feel about that, but that's just my take on it.
Yeah, and some people have really benefited from this. And
like who?
Like anyone who drafted Tom Brady 2 years ago with that 4-game suspension in the beginning of the season.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, okay.
And anyone who drafted him, he came out and just scorched earth that entire season. His draft position dropped way down, and people really took advantage, and it pissed me off.
All right, yeah, that's true. And I think because the season prior was like one of his best ever in his career, and he really just like the trajectory was the same. It was just minus 4 games. I don't know. I'm trying to think of somebody who's the opposite of that, like maybe like a Josh Gordon.
Well, you have Ezekiel Elliott 2 years ago, where every Sunday you're sitting there waiting for an injection from the court, this court, that court, and it was all season long. Next thing you know, he's suspended on the back end of your season,
right at the
beginning of the playoffs.
Yep, right at those playoffs.
A lot of people took a big hit.
Now this brings me into my hate. My hate is all these injuries that we keep having in the preseason. It seems more and more every single year. These top tier players that I'm spending all this time scouting and building my board around are falling. Darius Geis. Can you stop me? Oh, Darius Geis was a guy last year who, he was probably creeping up some people's boards, but I was going to jump in and snag, a round before everybody else, and I thought I would have had a really good shot to just steal at the running back position, which is the hardest position to get a steal at.
Absolutely. There's always the mid-round guys. You can do the homework and throw a lot of darts at the board. But I got to be honest with you, I don't know, because you use the example of Darius Geis. I don't know if Darius Geis is going to actually be a formidable fantasy player this year.
Not now.
I think Adrian Peterson's, they didn't really take too many people behind him. He's saying he's going to get 2,000 yards this year.
He's been saying that his whole career.
Yeah, and hey, he's been doing it for most of it. All right, Matt, where is your preseason daily hate at today?
Not even just preseason, man. It's trying to figure out these keepers that have these nagging injuries, okay? When you're stuck with a guy like Leonard Fournette, who, when he's on the field, over 20 points a game. But he's also off the field at the beginning or the middle or even at the end of your season. You never know when he's going to be available for you.
And that's what that does for you. When you were talking about Carson Wentz earlier, that's what that makes me think of. Like, I don't know about you guys, but off volume alone, Leonard Fournette currently going around the 3rd, 4th round right now. Probably day of draft somewhere in that range. I might take a stab at Leonard Fournette, but I'm going to probably take stabs at guys like Josh Jacobs because he's getting the workload. Carryon Johnson, even though he's got a little bit of a injury, risk and things like that. Sony Michel's another guy if he can stay healthy. Like I might take those guys and their injury risks over Fournette's. But if Fournette's there in the 3rd, 4th round after those guys are off the board and I'm up, I might take him. Are you still taking him?
I'm not sure. You got to remember it's been consistently the ankle. And the ankle isn't something that really gets stronger after injuries, you know, and it's just one after another. So now his ankle is a lot less than it was, and this is going back to the same thing, going back to college.
Yeah, tell me about it, man. It ended my slow pitch softball career, bro.
It was way over before then, you fat fuck. Alright, enough with the hate.
That's fucked up.
Let's get to my favorite segment, the mailbag, where we ask you, our fans, on Instagram and Facebook to ask us anything you want about fantasy football. Now, don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Trash Talk Fantasy _podcast and on Facebook at Trash Talk Fantasy Podcast. First question comes to us from HP at Unsportsmanlike Conduct, and they ask, will Sterling Shepard be a number 1 wide receiver?
Yeah, I don't know if he becomes a number 1 wide receiver. I'm not even sure he's going to be the number 1 wide receiver on that team, to be honest with you. Now, I get the thought of this. OBJ is going to be out. He got 124 targets last year, and those need to go around somehow. But I honestly think that Evan Ingram becomes the number 1 receiver not named Saquon Barkley. I think Saquon improves from this. I think Ingram improves from this. He's a beast. Let's not forget he's only 2 years removed from being a top 3 or 4 tight end in his rookie year. He lines up outside. He can run quick routes. He can run long routes. I don't think that Sterling Shepard's the guy, me personally. I don't know about you, Mike.
Yeah, there's a lot of concerns here. So my biggest concern is Eli. 1, can he throw the ball down the field? No. 2, is he even going to be their quarterback the entire season? They just drafted, Adams out of...
Jones. Daniel Jones out of Duke.
Out of Duke.
They moved up on him. Nobody had him on their board.
Right. They could have waited and just wasted some picks for that one.
But he did have a hall pass from the Manning family.
Oh, yeah, because he paid a lot of money in donations to their quarterback camp.
So, I mean, my comparison for Sterling Shepard is Steve Smith. Same size, same build. He's about 5'10", 194. But does he have the will, the want to win that Steve Smith had? No, Steve Smith went out there and took what was his.
That was a bad man.
Sterling Shepard doesn't do that for me.
When he pulls out his wallet, it says bad motherfucker on it.
I agree.
All right, now going into our next question from Coin the Boys at Tally Boys on Instagram.
Tally Boys!
Will James Conner be a top 10 running back?
Absolutely. There's no doubt in my mind that James Conner comes through for his owners just like he did last year.
Yeah, I mean, if you really look at it, last year the Steelers passed more than they ever have. They had almost 700 pass attempts and only about 550 rushing attempts. So now those rushing attempts are going to jump up. The only thing that I'm worried about with those rushing attempts is it going to be a smaller committee? Can James Conner, he had about 225 carries, I believe, last year. Is he going to be able to sustain that? Towards the end of the year, he started to get a little bit banged up. So are they going to start bringing in other people? And you know how Mike Tomlin is. They get a new running back in. He has a hot hand. That's your new starter. You know, so there is competition there. Samuels came in last year and covered in for him just fine. Le'Veon Bell was gone the year prior. James Conner came in. It was just fine. So they're very fluid at running back. Is there anything that, keeps him apart from other guys?
Well, yeah, I mean, one, he protects the ball. He had 4 fumbles last year, but you also got to remember, when they had Williams running really hot, they went right back to Le'Veon Bell, so they're always going to go back to their bell cow.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll give you that one.
I mean, my biggest concern here is his ability to keep Ben upright. Last year, Ben had more interceptions than he's had in the past 4 seasons. He's taken more sacks than he has in the last 4 seasons.
Very true.
Is James Conner going to lose snaps to somebody that can, protect Ben and keep him upright? And those snaps are going to translate to carries because
you're on the field, you're the guy. When you're on the field, you're your guy. Absolutely. All right, so we all in agreement? Top 10?
Top 10.
Top 10.
All right, and our third and final question comes from Ray Avila 1238 on Instagram. And he asks, does Deontay Foreman ever become the lead back in Houston?
Angela, I'm going to take this one and just settle this really easily. The answer to that is no. He's had his opportunities and he couldn't come through. And now that he's post-Achilles and all the reports coming out of Houston are that he's out of shape and he's not ready there. If he wanted this, it was his job to take, but he needs to step up and be a man and take it, and I just don't see that being the case.
Yeah, not at this point. He's had a couple seasons and he can't get on the field. Can't get on the field, can't help your team.
And this brings us to our next segment, Bold Predictions.
Bold Predictions.
Hey, Angela, would you like to get us started here?
Yeah, I'll get started here. So, I got a bold prediction. I got a hot take. I've seen some other people buzz about it. And I just want to go on the record here and say Tyler Boyd will be a better fantasy football wide receiver than A.J. Green. A.J. Green currently going 34th overall in ADP. Tyler Boyd 68. Let's not forget, last year when A.J. Green went down, even though A.J. Green plays great, he's always been boomer bust. You're going to have 40-point weeks and then a 3-point week. Which I want consistency. I'll take the guy who gives me 20 every week, week in, week out. Last year, Tyler Boyd did just that. And now Zach Taylor comes in from the Rams and clearly already says that he's going to run a Ram-style offense and that Tyler Boyd is going to be the Cooper Kupp role. That means huge possessions, huge targets. I also have a problem with the fucking letter H today, too. Not a problem with the letter F, though, so you guys can go fuck yourselves if you don't think that Tyler Boyd is better than A.J. Green. That's my bold prediction. I'm done. I'm dropping the mic. Hey, guys. If you're still listening at this point, I'm more impressed than you could possibly ever imagine. Fortunately, we lost a little bit of audio. It is our first podcast. We are still getting our feet wet. But I want to play for you the interview with Dr. Nithin. Has great information on Carson Wentz, on Todd Gurley, on Kerryon Johnson, Cam Newton, Phillip Lindsay, along with others. We'll see you next week when we bring you our running back edition of the podcast. Stay tuned. I am very happy now to announce that we have Dr. Nithin on the phone. Dr. Nithin, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself for the people?
Hey, Angelo. Great to be on Trash Talk. I'm Nithin Nawat. I'm a primary care sports medicine physician, and I work pretty heavily with D1 college teams and some orthopedic surgeons. I'm not a surgeon, but I do a bunch of non-operative procedures.
That's awesome. You're definitely way more qualified than we are to talk about this. So, as our listeners, we reached out to them and really wanted to find out what injuries were concerning them for the fantasy season upcoming. And as you know, in June, we don't have a lot to talk about, so this seems like a perfect segue to start bringing you on and introduce you to everybody. The first name that keeps coming up is Carson Wentz. So he just signed that $128 million contract, and he's got some back concerns. He's had some wrist injuries, things like that. Are you concerned about Carson Wentz's back moving forward?
So currently I'm not really concerned with his injuries. A lot of people are saying that he's injury prone, and I don't really subscribe to that right now because his two injuries that he had were completely unrelated. He had his ACL that was torn, and he had to have that repaired. And honestly, that injury, as you've seen in the NFL, it happens to a lot of players. It's pretty much random. And the thing about Carson Wentz is he's a pocket passer, so his mobility it's not like he's Cam Newton, who's got to rely a lot on that mobility factor. So I'm confident that he's going to be able to stay in the pocket and keep making those passes. I don't think the ACL impacts that. Now, moving on to his back injury, that was actually what they call a stress fracture or a spondylolysis in that vertebrae.
Okay.
And what happens there is it's a lot of kind of overuse or repetitive injury. And if it's not diagnosed early, which it seemed like they caught it kind of late last year, then it can linger for a little bit.
So you're not worried.
Sorry, keep going.
So you're not worried. I know that their team physicians kind of rushed him back. There was a lot that they didn't tell him about that injury. From like a sports medicine as a professional, I'm assuming you guys are disclosing everything to these athletes as they're out there, right?
Yes. Yeah. If there was an imaging study that showed that stress fracture on there would be no situation in which the player did not know about that. The issue is I think he had the imaging study done pretty late that diagnosed that stress fracture, and that's why he was kind of out there while having his back pain, and then finally they got that MRI study that showed that stress fracture, and that's when they ended up shutting it down.
Oh, okay. So it doesn't sound like a thing of like a collusion or something that they were hiding or anything like that. It just seems like a timing issue.
Yeah, just a late, unfortunately, a late imaging study, which, I mean, there was probably a reason why they thought it was a more likely injury that they held off on ordering that study. But I have no doubt that it's not like they were hiding findings of this stress fracture from him.
Fantastic. All right, well, the next name is a name that I'm personally throwing out there.
Okay.
It's a guy that I love. I have him in dynasty leagues. From what I understand, it was an MCL injury with Kerryon Johnson in Detroit. Is there anything you can, any kind of light you can shed on that?
Yeah, so I'm actually a huge fan of Kerryon as well, too. I just did a post about that, about a lot of people are concerned because he went on IR last season, and usually that indicates, a pretty severe injury. But honestly, word came out that it seems like it was an MCL injury, which out of all those knee ligaments is probably the best one to injure. It's rarely ever operated on, even if it's a really severe tear, and honestly, it's a pretty consistent recovery period, about 8 weeks. And I mean, we're well outside that 8-week mark. There's been reports of him running strong in camp, and that new offensive coordinator they got in there, his philosophy is run the ball down the other team's throat. So
yeah, and finally Detroit has a bell cow back. I love Kerryon Johnson. I mean, I really think he could be the face of their franchise. I've loved him since early last year. He's fantastic. Now, another name that we keep getting a lot about, obviously, is Todd Gurley. Now, Ian Rappaport came out and said that he is no longer going to be their every down back, no longer the bell cow. They did move up early into the third round on day 2 to get Montgomery. Where are you seeing Todd Gurley with his injuries? I know we talked about this a little bit previously, but just for the folks at home here, where are you seeing Todd Gurley from an injury standpoint?
So this is going to be the first player that I'm going to take not a great rosy take on, even though Gurley is probably the reason why I won my league the past 2 seasons. He has arthritis, and as a running back, that's not a great condition to have. And he's young, and people are like, you don't get arthritis in your 20s, but he had an ACL repair, and whenever you have an ACL repair, that you're basically guaranteed to get arthritis in a 5 to 15 year period. And with how many touches they load up on him, I'm not really surprised that he ended up getting arthritis on the earlier end of that. He's about 5 to 6 years out, I think, from that ACL surgery right now.
So the timing's right there for him.
Him down. I don't think that they're going to be loading him up on touches because this is a progressive disease, and the more weight bearing, the more kind of bruising that it takes, the worse it gets.
Now, the lovely thing about you that I really wanted to bring you on our show for was you are a fantasy football guy, not just a doctor. Obviously, you have the knowledge well further than any of us do. Would you still draft him as a top 10 running back?
So, do you think he's a top 10 running back?
Yeah, do you think he's still a top 10 guy in your opinion?
I would say he's right on that fringe of top 10, so I would say 10 to 12. But I would hope that there were some smatterings of wide receivers that were taken in that top 10, 12 group, like before that, so that way he stretches it out to maybe the end of the second, beginning of the third. That's where I would want to pull the trigger on him. Yeah,
same here. I don't know if I could do early second round on that. Just if you look at the value alone, last year, including receptions, Todd Gurley had 337 attempts, essentially. That's a lot. And if we cut that in half down to about 200, he's still great. I mean, he's still going to win you games. Me, personally, I think he's a guy that's going to win you games early in the season to get you in the playoffs, and then you're going to need to figure out something off the waiver wire or off your bench after that part. But you guys...
Honestly, that was going to be my strategy if I did end up with him, even though I'm not targeting him. But if I end up with him late in the second and early in the third, I'm going to be trying to trade him if he blows up in that first half of the season and try and get some real good value from someone who I feel like will be reliable down the stretch in the playoffs.
Absolutely, like
Not
maybe
sure
like
about him, and I might kick myself later on, but I'll take that risk.
Yeah, maybe even like a Kerryon Johnson there to trade, at that same point, because that's a guy I think, obviously we're both high on. All right, so Todd Gurley, you guys heard it here first. Todd Gurley is still a top 10, top 12 running back, even with the injury, even with the share and touches. Now, the last guy, some of our viewers already know from our previous podcast, I am not high on A.J. Green. I think A.J. Green is a major bust this year. His numbers are there. When he's hurt and leaves, he's still in that trajectory to hit those number one receiver numbers. But I'm just noticing the boomer bust patterns with him are a lot more intense, where he's getting 40 points and then 1 point, and then 30 points and then 2 points. I personally think that Tyler Boyd is the guy in Cincinnati to really take over, especially with Zach Taylor's new offense. Injury standpoint-wise, though, with A.J. Green coming back, where is he?
So, yeah, a lot of people are concerned about that toe injury because, it's a repeat injury. He had the same exact injury in 2014. The difference between the two of them is that they did that non-operatively, and they did an operation on this one, which is a little bit more of a definitive treatment when, you're not seeing the good results from from not doing an operation. So, in that regard, I think He has a good shot of being healthy. He has a good shot of putting up solid numbers. But I'm on board with you about Tyler Boyd because AJ Green's ADP right now is in the 3rd or 4th round, I think, and Boyd is closer to like the 7th to 9th. And I had Boyd last year, and as long as AJ Green was on the field in that latter half of the season, Boyd was putting up wide receiver 1 numbers. And AJ Green, when he got injured, Boyd dropped off a little bit because it seemed like he was having a little bit of trouble at the top corners, but AJ Green wasn't even there. So if I had my choice between those two, it seems like Boyd's a much safer play, a much better draft position. He can pick up someone who might have a better ceiling with more stability at that higher 3rd to 4th round place.
Absolutely, man. Totally agree. So at this point, those are really the main names that our listeners are asking for. Just from your expertise, is there any players this year that are coming back off an injury, maybe like a Jimmy Garoppolo, that are super sleeper picks in your opinion, or is there guys that are coming back from injury that maybe you're staying away from completely? So Jeremy McKinnon came out last year. Who else do we have? Philip Lindsay is another guy who had some injury concerns last year.
I definitely want to talk about him, actually.
Okay.
Because he had a scaphoid fracture, and scaphoid fractures, along with that ligament injury he had, they're known to reduce that grip strength. So that I have a major red flag put on him, because all the studies show that they have about 80% of their grip strength following those kind of repairs. And for a running back, that's huge. There's like a lot of ball security issues that are in my mind there.
Absolutely.
And he also has a very healthy backfield behind him too. So he's someone who I will definitely not be targeting in my draft.
Gotcha. I guess the only other question that I have, if we're shooting out names in specific, would be Cam Newton. There's a lot of people that think Cam Newton's not going to be the starter in Carolina for the first few weeks. Is there any light you can shed on that?
I think that he is going to be the starter. There's all the reports are pointing positively. It seems like they said he had a simple shoulder surgery, and he's only about, I just did a post on this as well too. I think January, is that correct?
Yeah, it was back in January.
So if it was a rotator cuff repair, if it was a labral repair, he wouldn't be back throwing. He's already back throwing. They say that he's full clear to go. That means they just went in there and cleaned up some stuff. And the fact that he's throwing without issue, throwing a full-size football, I don't have any concerns with him. I actually think that since this is his second shoulder surgery in about 2 years, I think he might have a couple more checkdowns, which in my opinion increases the value of Greg Olsen and CMC as well too. But I would feel confident taking him in the later rounds, like around that 7th to 9th round when people start making a run on quarterbacks. I'd be really happy to have him.
Awesome. Well, Dr. Nithin, I thank you so much for all your time today. Guys, if you have the opportunity on Instagram, please go add Dr. Nithin. He is at FantasyDocs on Instagram. Is there any other social media sites you're on, Doc?
No, just currently Instagram.
All right, thanks, guys. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram at TrashTalk_Fantasy and on Facebook at Trash Talk Fantasy Podcast. Thank you so much, Doc.